lives. There's the ripple effect he saw in his own lifetime. They did evil to him, but it turned out ultimately for good, even for them. So here's the bottom line. While respecting free choice, God can bring good from evil. Now at this point in the Michigan State presentation, there was a man sitting 10 feet away from the atheist who had asked the original question, and he put his hand up, and I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, he looked first over at the atheist, then he looked back at me, and he goes, "I know of a woman who was raped, and the rape nearly destroyed her." And then his voice began to crack. And he said, "But this woman decided that she was not going to punish the baby for the sin of the father. She decided to bring this baby to term. And the baby boy grew up to be a man." By this time, he's crying openly in front of everybody. And he said, "This man grew up to be a pastor. And this pastor has led many people to Christ, to know Christ and to grow in Christ." Then he looked over at the atheist and he said, "That man grew up, or that boy grew up to be me." And he said, "If my mom can bring good from evil, so can God." What did I say after that? "You're dismissed." How can you top that? He had a better answer than I could ever think of. Now, think about this problem this way. You hear people saying this all the time. God is all loving and God is all powerful. If he's all loving and all powerful, yet evil exists, then one of these two things is false. Either he's not all loving or he's not all powerful. Because if he was all loving and all powerful, he would end evil, but he hasn't done it. What's left out of this problem is another attribute of God. Yes, God is all loving, yet God is all powerful, yet he's also all wise. He can see how it's all going to work out. Now, there was a pastor in Notre Dame, the real Notre Dame, the Notre Dame over there in Paris, 150 years ago, who said one of the most profound things on this topic I've ever read. Here's what he said. He said, "If God would concede me his power for 24 hours, you would see how many changes I would make in the world. But if he gave me his wisdom too, I would leave things as they are." Because God knows the end from the beginning. We don't. We can't see how the ripple effect's going to work out. God can. Now, how do you think the atheist looked after this? He was gone. He left as soon as the seminar was over. But I went to the pastor who actually told us of his mother's rape, and I learned his name is Gary Bingham. And he is a pastor in Marion, Indiana. He actually drove up to Michigan State that day. And I said, "How's your mom now?" And he said, "Well, she had a rough life, but about 4 years ago she became a Christian. She's doing much better now." And I said, "Well, please thank her, obviously, for what she did, but also let her know that what she did is rippling forward now. It's rippling forward to affect everyone in this room." And then I wrote a column on it, so it rippled forward further. And then I put it in the Stealing from God book, so it's rippling forward even more. What she did. All right, final question, then we'll get to your questions. Evil doesn't disprove God. God has a purpose for evil, even though we don't always know what it is. What's God's solution to evil? Let me ask you a question. Does God promise to protect Christians from evil and suffering? No. In fact, I want you to take a look at these people up here. First of all, this is Peter being crucified upside down. What's the common thread running through all these biblical characters? Every one of them have either been martyred or they experienced tremendous suffering in their life, or both. Why then do we find people on so-called Christian TV saying, "If you just send me $1,000, you're going to be healthy and wealthy"? What kind of nonsense is that? The Word of Faith movement. Can you believe this? It's easily pointed out that there's a problem with that. Why? Because if you're not healthy and wealthy because you don't have enough faith, If you were only had more faith, you'd be healthy and wealthy. Then why were all these people persecuted and martyred? Don't tell me Jesus and the apostles didn't have enough faith. Please. In fact, the Bible even says that you will suffer if you're a Christian. You will be persecuted. Jesus said, if they persecuted me, they're going to persecute you. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I've overcome the world. So don't buy into this idea that everything's going to go well by earthly standards if you become a Christian. In fact, they may become a lot worse, because that's how you know and grow in God. But what is God's solution to pain and suffering? God suffered himself. He didn't sit passively in heaven and tolerate our sin. As love requires, he actually did something about it. His pain can be our gain. Now, when I say can be, what do I mean by that? If you don't want what he's provided, you don't have to accept it. I was at the unmentionable school up north a few years ago and had a debate there with an atheist. His name was Eddie Tabash, very nice attorney from Beverly Hills. And during the debate, Eddie asked me this question. He said, Frank, my mother was a survivor of the Holocaust. She lived a life full of pain and suffering. Toward the end of her life, somebody offered her the gospel, but she rejected it and then she died. Is she in hell right now? Wow, that's a tough question, especially in front of a secular audience. Basically what he's asking is, would a loving God send you to hell? And I said to him, Eddie, I don't know where your mother is now. I don't know if she had a deathbed conversion or not. But if she didn't accept Christ before she died, then God is too loving to force her into heaven against her will. You see, because the assumption behind the question is that everybody wants to go to heaven. That's not true. Who's in heaven? Jesus is in heaven. People have been running from Jesus their entire lives. How would it be loving of Jesus is after they die, he goes, okay, you're with me now. Come over here. How is that loving? You say, well, what's all this business about hell? Well, hang on. In fact, I used this illustration with the University of Michigan audience that night, and I'll use it with you guys. In fact, I asked the ladies this question, so ladies, I'm just going to ask you this question that I asked them. Ladies, have you ever had a man pursue you whom you did not want to date? Some of you are going, yeah, and he's sitting next to me right now. He will not leave me alone. Whenever I ask that question, the ladies always giggle and the men look at their shoes. Like, is she looking at me right now? Well, suppose he pursues you, he continues to pursue you, and he keeps asking you out, and ladies, you finally go, look. I like you, but only as a... Ladies, why don't you just stick the knife in and turn it? Every man has heard the dreaded friend rejection. Gentlemen, if you ever hear this, move on. She's not interested. In fact, I have some shocking news for you. She doesn't even like you as a friend. Because if she did, she'd be interested. Right, ladies? You're just tolerating him. But suppose this doesn't deter him. He continues to pursue. And he finally says, look, I love you so much, I'm going to force you to love me. Ladies, run, screaming from the building. Can he force you to love him? No, love by definition must be freely given. You can't force anybody to love anybody. Now, ladies, if he did truly love you, what would he do? What would he do? He would leave you alone. Well, that's what God does for us. He sends us cards, letters, and flowers. He sends us creation. He sends us conscience. He sends us the Bible. He may send us a missionary, a TV broadcast, a radio broadcast. He may send you Ratio Christie and Eric Chabot. He may send you an angel if you're in a Muslim country and you can't get the gospel any other way, or an appearance of some kind. Many Muslims are coming to faith that way. He may do all those things, and if you keep saying no, God will give you up to your own desire. That's what Paul talks about in Romans chapter 1. He'll give you up to your own desire. He'll say, I know you don't want me, so I'm going to leave you alone. And you say, well, what's this business about hell then? Well, that's what hell is. Hell is separation from God. Look, if there is a God, and there is an afterlife, and there's only two possible destinations. You're either going to be with God, that's heaven, or you're going to be separated from God, that's hell. And you go, well, what could be so bad about that? Well, look, every human being, whether they're a Christian or not, experiences some of the common grace of God. We all experience relationships. We all experience love. We all experience a future and a hope for the future. We experience all those good things. But I want you to imagine a place where there's none of that. Where there are no relationships. There is no companionship. There is no love. There is no hope for a future. There's just stone cold, narcissistic self-absorption. That is Washington. That's hell. We ought to start calling Washington hell now, right? You're separated from the ultimate source of goodness in the universe. Why? By your own choice. That's why God won't force you into His presence against your will. You don't want Him. Now, if there was any other way, God would make another way, but there's no other way. The very reason that God came to save us is He came to save us from hell. The only way an infinite being can reconcile His infinite justice and His infinite love is to punish someone else in our place, because we can't make it on our own. We've all fallen short. So in order for God to be just, He has to punish someone. He punishes an innocent substitute in our place. And then you have the opportunity to either accept that substitute, that pardon, or reject it. That's up to you. In fact, C.S. Lewis put it very well. He said there's only two kinds of people in the end. Those who say to God, "Thy will be done," and those to whom God says, "Thy will be done." What kind of person are you? Are you going to say to God, "Thy will be done"? Or are you going to have Him say to you, "Thy will be done"? There's only two possible choices here. That's it at the end of the day. So, let's end where we began. Where does the real moral compass point? Is there out there something really known as right? And any deviation from right or goodness is wrong or evil? Remember I told you about the two young men who came and expressed a lot of skepticism, and then the father came the next night and he said, "What do I do?" And I said to him, his name is Steve, I said, "Steve, hopefully this is just a phase in your son's lives. It's okay to be mad at God. The Bible writers are mad at God. Read Habakkuk. Read some of the Psalms. Read Jeremiah, Lamentations. They're mad at God too. It's okay, God can take it. It's okay to be mad at God. Do you realize that you can't hurt God by cursing Him, and you can't help Him by praising Him? Why? He's an infinite being. If you curse Him, you're only hurting yourself. If you praise Him, you're only helping yourself. So, I said to him, "Steve, do you think we could talk about this after the seminar instead of in front of 300 people?" He said, "Sure." So the thing got over at 10 p.m. I said, "Why don't we go to dinner?" So we did, South Dakota. We sat down, and for about an hour and 15 minutes, Steve just told us everything that happened. It was cathartic for him, because I can't believe I didn't see this going on. This guy who was doing this to my daughter was like Jesus to us. He had a ponytail. And he was always carrying his Bible around and always saying, "Hey, let's pray." Christopher Hitchens is right. There's a lot of religious people who do evil things out there. And there he was molesting my daughter for 10 years. And so I said to him, "Steve, I don't know when the right time is. You'll know when the right time is. But I want you to say this to your sons. If there is no God, what that man did to your sister isn't really wrong. It's just your opinion. If there's no compass beyond you, Everything's just a matter of opinion. He had his compass pointed to him. Whatever his sexual gratification that he wanted was right for him. Do you really believe that's true? The very reason you're upset, and you should be, is because you know a great injustice has been done. But there can't be injustice unless there's justice, and there can't be justice unless God exists. And I said, the second thing you need to say to your sons is this. Oh, by the way, I didn't tell you. The guy who did this, everybody knows who did it. But he's still walking the streets. Why? Because every time the